Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video. And today we're over in a different location because we're going to be deciding my TBR for the TBR Clear Out Readathon. So if you don't know what the TBR Clear Out Readathon is, I will link my initial announcement video down below, but basically it is a readathon taking place throughout the whole month of April, which is all about reading books from your TBR. So for me this is going to be my physical TBR, these two shelves here, but it might be your ebook or audiobook TBR or whatever you like really, as long as you're reading books that you've been meaning to get to for a while. And there are 7 kind of optional prompts for the TBR Clear Out Readathon, which I'll go through in a second, but basically it's just a readathon that is about getting your TBR down. And I would really like to try and get my physical TBR down in the month of April. So my physical TBR currently stands at 42 to 46 books. I'm saying that because there are 4 books that I am hoping to read by the end of March. I'm pre-filming this slightly, which I might have read by the end of March, in which case my TBR will be at 42 books, but I might not manage to get through all 4 of them, in which case my TBR will be somewhere between 42 and 46 books by the time this video goes up. We'll just see. If I don't manage to read those 4 books, which are sat over there on a shelf for my March TBR, then I might end up reading some of them in April, but we'll see how I go. So my physical TBR is split across these 2 shelves. They are not really in any order, they're mostly in the order of where they fit. I did for a while try and have like books I was planning to get to soonest on the top shelf and books I was planning on leaving for a while on the bottom shelf, but that system has kind of fallen apart as I have been trying to make books fit on these 2 shelves. You can't really see because of how I've angled the camera, but this shelf is part of my desk, so this is my desk here. My computer is right here, and I work from home, so you know I sit at this desk all day long doing my work and looking at my TBR and thinking about the books I need to read. So my TBR currently stands at, you know, around 42 books, and I would really like to get that down, and I'm going to try really hard to get it down quite a lot in April. There are a few reasons why I want to get my TBR down. I think I've mentioned on this channel before that I think there are 2 different ways of approaching your physical TBR. Either it is your own personal library and you like to go and shop there for whatever you want to read and then pick a book from it, or it is your to-do list. And I very much view my physical TBR as my to-do list. These are books which I need to read and I want to read soon, and I feel slightly cross with myself when I'm not reading them. I would also really like to get my physical TBR down so that I can rearrange the way I have done my shelves on my desk. In an ideal world, I would like just this top shelf to be my physical TBR of like 15 to 20 books, and then I could use this bottom shelf here for historical research books, basically because I have realised over the last like year that there are quite a lot of books that I am like regularly going and getting from another room, which are non-fiction books about 19th century history, and I'm using these for historical research either for my own writing or when I'm doing copy editing or line editing. I work as a freelance editor and I do a lot of edits of books set in 19th century Britain because that's something I know quite a lot about, and I feel like I just want those books on my desk because I use them a lot. So in an ideal world I'd like to have a physical TBR that it was small enough to fit just on this shelf. That would make me quite happy. Am I going to achieve that just in April? Probably not, but I reckon I can read quite a lot. So to move on to the TBR, there are 7 prompts for the TBR Clear Out Readathon, and the first one is just to set your own TBR clear out goal. So I'm going to have a goal, I'm going to have a stretch goal because, you know, I like to try and push myself, and I am hopeful that I will be able to read quite a lot in April. I have a bit of time off work in April and I'm hoping I'll manage to find time to have like a full reading day where I read all day and do nothing else, and I'm really hoping that I will just manage to read a lot of books in April, and I feel like with the April I have planned I should be able to read a lot. We'll see how I go. I might not be able to read as much as I want to, but I would like to. So I'm going to say that my like main target is to read 15 books from my physical TBR in April, but my stretch target is to try and read 20. I feel like that would be a push. Like 20 books in a month would be an awful lot for me. 15 books in a month would be like a tiny bit of a stretch, but 20 books in a month would be a big stretch for me. But I know that I have some time off work in April, and I do really want to try and get my physical TBR down, so you know, we're gonna see how I go. So that is prompt number 1 for the TBR Clear Out Readathon. Then the rest of the 6 prompts are sort of book related. So prompt 2 is read a book that has been on your TBR for a very long time, and there are 2 books I want to pick out for this. So the book that has been on my TBR for the longest time is The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. I have had this book on my physical TBR for nearly 10 years. I bought The Satanic Verses along with And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini and The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. I bought those three books from Waterstones in Durham after I had done my final exams in my degree at university nearly 10 years ago, because I was like, oh, I finished my degree, I want to buy some books that I'm really excited to read. And so I bought three books. I've read the other two, and the other two are like firm favourites of mine, but I never got round to reading The Satanic Verses. I bought this because I had studied Midnight's Children at university and loved it, but I've never read anything else by Salman Rushdie since, but I do really want to. It is the book that has been on my TBR for the longest by a very, very, very long way, so I want to finally try and get round to reading this in April. And then the book that has been on my TBR for the second longest amount of time is Little by Edward Carey, and this has been on my TBR since 2019, so for 5 years, not nearly so long as The Satanic Verses, but still quite a long time. So I got Little by Edward Carey because it was on the Walter Scott Prize long list, the first year that I read along with the Walter Scott Prize long list, but I never got round to reading it, and because I had been sent a review copy kind of specifically to read it for the Walter Scott Prize, therefore when the Walter Scott Prize was kind of over for that year, I just didn't have the same like push to pick it up, and it's been sat on my shelves ever since. But I've heard some really fantastic things about it, and actually lately quite a few booktubers have read it and been talking about how much they loved it, so I feel like it is finally time to read Edward Carey's Little. I will try and read this in April too. Prompt number 3 is to read a book that has been on your TBR for a very short time, and the two books that have been on my TBR for the shortest time are the two up here, that's why they're at the very top. So here we have The Mars House by Natasha Pulley, Natasha Pulley's new novel that has just come out, which is a work of science fiction for a change. Usually she writes historical fiction. I'm so excited for this because Natasha Pulley is my favourite living author, and I think I'm going to love this, and I don't want to leave it too long before reading this, so I think I will try and read this in April. I'm just very excited for it because, yeah, I love Natasha Pulley a lot. And then the other book that has just come onto my TBR is this. This is The Premonition by Banana Yoshimoto. I haven't included this in a book haul yet, but we'll count this as hauling it here, and I'm excited to read this because Banana Yoshimoto is another of my favourite living authors. This is very short, so this won't take long to get off my TBR, and I can't wait to read it. I have read everything else by Banana Yoshimoto that has been translated into English, but this is her new one that came out end of last year, I think, and I haven't read it yet, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I don't need to know anything about it, to be honest. I just love Banana Yoshimoto a lot. Prompt number 4 is to read one of the longest books on your TBR, and again I have 2 picks for this. Like playing Jenga with my bookshelf. So here I have The Story of the Stone Volume 2 by Tao Chen. So this is a Chinese classic from the 18th century. I read Volume 1 of this 5-volume epic back in 2022, and I still haven't read Volume 2. I've got Volume 3 on my shelf as well, and this is, I think, 600 and something pages. Yeah, I would really like to get to this in April because, you know, it's been a year and a bit since I read Volume 1, and I don't want to forget it too much, so hopefully I'll manage to read this at some point in April. The stack is going to get too big. I'm going to have to move this from here in a second. Anyway, and then the other book I've decided to pick for one of the longest books on my TBR is Nettleback by Nat Reeve. So this book is only actually 400 pages, but the writing is absolutely tiny. I feel like if this book had been typeset differently, it could have easily been 600 pages. I am slightly concerned that this is going to be a bit of a pain to read because the writing is so small, but I have heard really, really fantastic things about this on BookTube, especially in the last few months, and it does sound like a really good, interesting work of historical fiction set in the 19th century, which, you know, is my kind of thing, so I'm excited to read this one. Prompt number 5 is to read one of the shortest books on your TBR. So I have picked 4 very short books from my TBR, although actually one of them is The Premonition by Banana Yoshimoto that I have already mentioned, but I also have 3 very short books lurking on my TBR. So the 3 other shortest books on my TBR are here. So we have Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev, which is a Russian classic. We have Here Be Icebergs by Katya Adu, translated by Rosalind Harvey, which is a Peruvian short story collection. And here we have Jaguar Nana by Cyprian Akwenzi, which is a Nigerian classic from the 1950s. So I would really like to read these 3 very short books in April if I can, because I feel like it would be nice to get them off my TBR, and I'm really looking forward to all of them. However, I do feel like the TBR Clear Out Readathon for me needs to be focused on books that have been on my TBR for longer than at least these 3, which are quite new, and also on slightly longer books that I am less likely to fit in elsewhere. So I'm probably only going to read these 4 short books if I can read them all in one day. If I manage to have a day that I can dedicate just to reading, then I'll try and read these 4 in one day. I'm hoping to take part in Kirsten from Reading Nymphs 24-hour readathon on the 6th of April, or maybe another day around there if I can't manage to do it on the 6th of April itself. But if I did that and read these 4 books in one day, then I feel like that would be really nice. But if I don't manage to have one day where I just read, then I'm not sure that I will get to all 4 of these, because I think especially for the time when I'm off work in April, I really want to try and focus on the bigger books on my TBR. Then problem number 6 is to read a book from your TBR that you fear you have lost interest in. And there are 2 books I think I'm going to go for these. So we have here The Hollow Sea by Annie Kirby and More Than You'll Ever Know by Katie Gutierrez. So these 2 books are both proof copies of books that came out in 2022. And basically, the first time I went into the offices of my publisher, Michael Joseph, they offered me a lot of proofs, and I was very, very excited because it was my first time visiting my publisher's office, so I took a lot of proofs. And I obviously haven't read them all because I didn't know that much about them, and I just took a lot of proofs in excitement. The other books I picked up, which I think were Not Safe for Work by Isabel Kaplan and Mary Death Alone by Claire Alexander, and possibly Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I can't remember if I got that same day as well. But I really love those 3 books, and in general everything I've read from Michael Joseph, who I'm a publisher, I've really, really enjoyed. So I do feel like I really like these, but I don't know very much about them, and so they've kind of like languished on my TBR since 2022. So hopefully I'll read both of these in April, because that would be good. This stack is getting out of control. I need to move this out of shot. And then the 7th prompt for the TBR Clear Out Readathon is to read a book from your TBR that you are very excited to get to. And for that, I think I'm going to go for a couple of hardbacks that I bought when these books came out in 2023 that I haven't read yet. So here we have The Heroines by Laura Shepperson, which is a kind of realist Greek myth retelling. And here we have The Revels by Stacey Thomas, which is a work of historical fiction set in the mid-17th century about witch trials during the English Civil War. And also has a quote from Laura Shepperson on the back, which is fun. So these 2 books are debut works of historical fiction that came out in 2023. I know both the authors a bit, and I've been really, really excited to read both of these books since they came out. I bought The Heroines at Laura Shepperson's book launch, and I pre-ordered The Revels, so I've had both of these since they came out in 2023, but I just haven't read them yet. But I think I'm really going to love them, so these are high on my list, and I really want to get to these in April. That takes me up to a stack of 13 books already, just fulfilling the prompts, but I do want to read quite a few other things from my physical TBR in the month of April. So one thing I definitely want to get to, which I'm sure I will end up reading in April, is this Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. So I'm not actually going to read this physical edition, I'm going to listen to this on audiobook. This is the only book on my physical TBR that my library has an audiobook copy of, so I'm definitely going to be listening to this in April and getting it off my physical TBR. I'll probably end up listening to something else in April, to be honest, that isn't for the TBR Clear Out Readathon, but that's fine. I do usually manage to get through a few audiobooks a month, and I'm looking forward to reading this. I have obviously heard very good things about Shuggie Bain on BookTube and elsewhere, and, you know, I've been meaning to read it for a while, so it would be good to get this off my TBR. So those are 14 books that I've planned that I'm going to read in April, but like I said, my stretch goal for the TBR Clear Out Readathon is 20 books, so I think I'm going to pick 6 titles out of my TBR jar, and then I'll try to get to those 6 books as well. So let's see how we go. A Town Like Alice. So this is, oh no, the book Jenga's failed. This is A Town Like Alice by Neville Shute. I read The Pied Piper by Neville Shute back in 2022, I think, and really, really loved it. And so I got this after that, but I haven't read it yet, but I'm excited to read it. I think it'll be really, really good. So that's going on my TBR for April. Once Upon a Tome. This is Once Upon a Tome by Oliver Darkshire, which is a non-fiction work about rare bookselling. I feel like everything else on my list for April so far has been fiction, so a non-fiction one might be nice. I do feel like I have quite a lot of hardbacks, which are a bit heavy for carrying around and being portable, so whether I will end up focusing on some of the paperbacks on my list or swapping some things out further on in the month, we will see. Persephone Short Stories. So here we have the Persephone book of short stories, which actually is probably another one of the longer books on my TBR. This is like 450 pages, and this is a collection of short stories published from 1909 to 1986 from various writers. I really like Persephone books and I really enjoy short stories, so I'm sure I will enjoy this. That goes on my TBR for April. This next slip fell out of my TBR chart while I was taking the Persephone book of short stories out, so we'll take that as another pick. This is 8 Detectives by Alex Pavese. This is a historical crime novel set in the 1930s. I think this will be really fun and I've heard very good things. I also very much enjoy this cover with holes in. It's pretty fun, isn't it? Right, next one. Conclave. So this is Conclave by Robert Harris. I really like Robert Harris. I've read 4 of his books before, I think, and I really enjoy his writing. This one, I think, is a kind of like political thriller, I guess, about what happens after the Pope dies and who gets to decide who the next Pope is. I'm not 100% certain whether this one is contemporary or historical. Everything I've read by Robert Harris before has been historical, but I'm not sure. This one might be set in the modern day or it might be set like in the late 20th century. I'm not entirely certain. I really like Robert Harris anyway, so I'd be kind of interested to read this, so that goes on my TBR for April as well. Home. Oh, good. Oh, I'm excited to read that one. Right. Here we have Home by Kaylin Steed. This is another 2023 debut novel by an author who I know vaguely online, and I've been really excited to read this one for a while. So this book is about someone called Zoe who has escaped a cult and has to kind of go back, I think, to rescue her sister. I've just heard great things about this book and I've been meaning to read it for a little while, so I'm very excited to get to that at some point in April. So I think that leaves me with 20 books on my TBR. I'm going to have a little bit of a rearrange of my TBR shelf here and see if I can fit all the books I want to read in April on the bottom shelf, so I have them separated out for the next month or so. So I have rejigged my TBR a bit, so that up here we have books I am not planning on reading in the next month, and down here we have the books I'm going to try and read in April for the TBR Clear Out Readathon. There are 20 books here, some of which are a bit long. I'm probably not actually going to end up reading all of them, but it's nice to have a nice pile of possibilities and to be ambitious in my efforts to clear out my TBR this month. I might end up swapping out some books for other books, depending on what I feel like. You know, I never like to be too strict with a TBR, but I am really excited to get to all of these books and I would really like to try and get to them soon, so I will do my best to do that, and we'll see how we go. Anyway, I think that is mostly what I wanted to say in this video. Let me know down in the comments if you're taking part in the TBR Clear Out Readathon and what you're planning to read. Also, I am thinking maybe I'll try and do more TBR videos, like sat at my desk with my TBR shelf to like pick from, because I find that kind of fun and I quite like moving around filming location, so let me know what you think about that as well. But I think that's all for now. Thanks very much for watching and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.